Yeah, you can do that. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you. Hopefully you had a good break. I know it was a short one, but we really are excited to jump into this next session. Want to make sure that we have enough time for it. First off, a big thanks to Bank of America, our title sponsor here today. Also, those that were networking using the GeekWire Summit app presented by Alaska Airlines, we have some master networks in here. Todd, you missed it. I think you missed the conga line over here. The north end of the Sheraton was rocking it in the last session.
Wow.
Yes. So anyway, our master networkers, Malachi Williams, you've won a pair of tickets to Volta, Cirque du Soleil. If you are not in this room and you're in the health tech track, then we will get you the prize package. And Scott French, you have also won a pair of tickets. Yes, let's hear it for them. Tickets to Cirque du Soleil.
Excellent. So before we go into our next session, I would like to bring to the stage Jen Doddridge of Hired, who is going to say just a couple words here. Come on up, Jen. Yeah, so I missed the conga line?
Missed the conga line.
Wow.
Ben Slivko was pounding his head, too, in the front row. Yes, it got wild in here.
Go ahead, Jen. Welcome.
Hey, everybody. My name's Jen, and I work at Hired. Quick show of hands, who in the room's heard of Hired? Okay, cool. Glad you guys have. A good amount of people. Well, for those of you who haven't, want to give you a quick rundown. So Hired is a two-sided career marketplace that is matching active top technical talent with some of the world's most innovative companies across the nation and into Paris and London as well. We are using intelligent job matching and unbiased career counseling to help people find a job that they love and make it easy for everybody across the board. We're able to use the data and the insights that we have available to help companies like Zillow and Nordstrom and Dropbox hit their hiring goals, drive efficiency across all of their teams, and really just make an impact on the pipeline of technical talent that they're bringing in the door. If you guys have any questions or would like to learn more about Hired, please feel free to come find me or any of my fine people in the room with their Hired t-shirts on, and we'd love to chat. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for being part of the summit. You are also our lunch sponsor, so thank you for that. Lunch courtesy of Hired, so thank you so much to Hired for being a part of the summit.
All right, to set the stage for our next discussion, we sent Starless and Paco, producer and host of our GeekWire TLDR daily video show, to Seattle Center to get the pulse of the Nintendo fan base.
What was the first Nintendo game that you ever played?
Mario Brothers on NES.
Mario Kart?
Rad Racer, probably some Pokemon game.
Donkey Kong. Yeah, I played the Game Boy Color. You couldn't play it in the dark because there was no backlight.
Can you sing or hum a tune from a Nintendo game?
Oh, I can sing something from Rad Racer. Mario
Kart 8! Do do do.
Na 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 na.
Can you out-sing him?
Da 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 da.
Da 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 da.
I don't want to.
Imagine cruising.
Oh, this has been great stuff. Don't forget, you can subscribe to GeekWire TLDR, our daily video report, at geekwire.com/TLDR. By the way, I looked up the Rad Racer theme song. That guy was almost pitch perfect. How many years later? So that was fantastic. Nintendo has pulled off one of the great comebacks of the past decade in entertainment, rebounding to take the video game market by storm with its Nintendo Switch portable, home, and mobile console. We're going to get an inside look at the company in this next session through the eyes of our next speaker, Reggie Fils-Aime, President and Chief Operating Officer for Nintendo of America. Reggie runs the day-to-day operations of Nintendo in the United States, Canada, and Latin America. In the video game world, though, he's known by just one name. Please welcome to the GeekWire Summit stage, Reggie. Welcome, Reggie. Thank you.
I thought you were going to say it. Reginator, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, you've got some famous lines around your name, and maybe we'll get to those a little bit later. But, Reggie, I think a lot of people know Nintendo in a variety of different ways, and it was really remarkable to see that video, just the recall of the brand and its experiences. people technically define Nintendo as a multinational consumer electronics and video game company. To you and to the company right now, who is Nintendo? What is Nintendo in 2018?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me here. I get asked the question a lot, right? What is Nintendo? Who is Nintendo? How do you define yourself? From our viewpoint, Nintendo is an entertainment company. Our passion is making our consumers smile. And we do it a variety of different ways today. So we have a large piece of business that's focused on leveraging our intellectual property in a variety of different ways, whether it's in partnership with Kellogg's to create Super Mario cereal, whether it's a relationship with Universal Studios in a Super Mario world that's being built in their Osaka park right now, whether it's our relationship with Illumination Entertainment, where we're in the process of making a Super Mario movie. So that's one of our three core business pillars. The second is our mobile business. We've launched a variety of different mobile games, and we've got a Mario Kart mobile experience coming by the end of our current fiscal year. We've just launched a brand new intellectual property called Dragalia Lost in mobile. And then thirdly, we've got our dedicated video game business, which is the way most of our consumers interact with us. But these are the three key pillars of our business, all focused on driving really an entertainment positioning, utilizing our intellectual property, and as I said at the outset, making consumers smile.
So, as you said, though, most people think of Nintendo as a video game company. Are you in the process of trying to change that perception through your actions or your words?
Well, again, I believe that consumers know us through our intellectual property, right? The video you shot, having consumers have a memory of their favorite video game. I was just at a conference with 6,000 employees from GameStop. And as I interact with them, they're talking about their favorite experience with our games, our intellectual property. They're showing me their tattoos. You know, it's about our properties. It's about Mario and Zelda. It's about Pokemon, all of these wonderful intellectual properties. And how we leverage these across a variety of entertainment platforms is really how we're looking to grow the company.
Yeah. So Nintendo has been through a fascinating 5 or 6 years here. And if you look at the Nintendo Switch in particular, in a little bit more than a year, it sold nearly 20 million units. And I know you haven't reported the latest numbers yet, so it could very well be more than that. But there was a period that Nintendo went through 3, 4, 5 years ago where people were doubting the company. And if you look, I actually did some research and looked back to some of the coverage, and I think some of the more favorable words I found were out of touch, foolish, and doomed. And we've been talking a lot about leadership over the course of these last 2 days. When you are faced with that kind of skepticism from the external world, and clearly you've rebounded and changed the perception, but during that time period, how do you lead a massive group of employees and keep them still believing in this larger vision?
So just a few days ago, Nintendo celebrated its 129th birthday. 129 years old. So this is a company that has reinvented itself constantly. You know, many of your speakers are talking about invention of new companies. We reinvent ourselves, you know, every 5, 10 years. We have to in this fast-moving entertainment business. The other piece about Nintendo is we always do things differently. It's in our DNA. Doing what other people does is just not what we believe in. The other aspect to this is that we focus on giving consumers experiences that they haven't even thought of. And so when you're constantly going down this path, you create doubters. You create people who, because we're not taking a traditional path, people say, it must not be right, it won't be effective. So, whether it's been with the Wii, back in 2006, whether it's been with our Nintendo 3DS, whether it's now with the Nintendo Switch, our focus is innovating, giving new experiences, and in doing so, driving our business forward. Lastly, this innovation focus doesn't always work, and we're the first to admit that there will always be stumbles along the way. But in the words of one of our presidents, this is Mr. Yamauchi, he said, "When you're doing well, don't be excited about that high-flying performance. And when you're doing poorly, don't be saddened. Always have an even keel and always focus on the next big adventure." And that's what we do.
It's fascinating. You know who else likes to espouse that philosophy is Russell Wilson from the Seattle Seahawks. So I think you might have some commonalities there, although clearly you're on much more of a winning streak than they are right now.
Ouch.
So with that, how do you, though, rally the employee base? Were you giving out specific communications to them? What were you trying to do to make sure they stayed inspired to follow that vision?
Well, so we constantly talk to our employees about our mission, our strategies. I hold monthly meetings with all of our senior staff, constantly updating them on our performance, and their peers are sharing the results of all of the different activities. I personally meet with every group of new employees to Nintendo of America, sharing our philosophy, sharing our strategies, helping them understand where we're going. And so we do believe in heavily communicating what we're doing, how we're going about it, and we celebrate our progress, and we also talk about when things don't go right. Yeah. So it is a constant focus on being clear to all of our employees how we're doing. And this is not just a Nintendo of America approach. The same thing happens in Europe. The same thing happens in Japan.
One more question on your leadership style. There is an iconic video of you stepping up to the stage. I believe it might have been at an E3, and you said, "My name is Reggie. I'm about kicking ass." Do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, I'm about taking names, and we're about making games.
I remember, I think I was in the audience for that E3 in the press, and I remember thinking how different it was and how in contrast it was with my perception of Nintendo's culture. Was that a purposeful effort by you to make a statement about the company's attitude? And if so, what went into that?
Well, it was a purposeful statement on the part of the company. So not on my initiative, it really was on the part of the total company. And just to give some perspective, I joined the company in December of 2003. E3 was my first big public opportunity to speak to our community, the fans, the developers, our business partners. And as we were creating that messaging, myself and our global president at the time, Mr. Satoru Iwata, we were in constant communication as to what was the message that we wanted to deliver. And recall at that E3, we launched the Nintendo DS, the best-selling video game system of all time. And we showed the very first footage for a Zelda game, which was to become Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. A piece of video that literally made people cry. And so the entire presentation was focused on presenting, essentially a new Nintendo. A Nintendo focused on delivering innovation, a Nintendo focused on bringing the best of our intellectual property to bear. And so it was an entire presentation focused on the future and where we were looking to go. And so that line encapsulated what we were trying to do. We're going to be bold, we're going to take risks, we're going to push the business forward, and it was fortunate that it resonated so well.
Let's talk about the Switch. As I said, it's been out for a little bit more than a year, about 15 months. Tell us the story of this console. What did you think the first time you saw this?
So it's one of the things that I love about my job. I get to see our systems well in development. I get to see our games well in development. And again, to set the stage, we had launched a system called the Wii U, following on the heels of the Wii, which had sold 100 million units globally. And the Wii U did not have that same level of success. But what we heard from consumers is that the proposition of a tablet that they could experience gameplay, coupled with the ability to play games on the big screen TV, was really compelling. Also, what we heard from gamers around the world is the one point in their gaming experience that they hate is when they have to put the controller down and go do something else, go to work, go to school, what have you. And so that started our thinking around a system that would allow you to play on a big screen TV and then take it out of a dock and take it with you and play whenever, wherever you wanted to. And as I saw the embodiment of that system, and when I first experienced Nintendo Switch, for me it was a moment where the hair on the back of my neck raised, and it was the same way I felt when I first held the Wii remote, and the same way I felt when I first saw the inner workings of a Nintendo DS. And so with that moment, we knew we had a compelling proposition. But what I was actually holding in my hand was a non-working unit. It was something meant to stimulate how it felt in the hand and what the core concept would be. Our engineers had to execute it. Our developers needed to create the compelling content to bring it to life. And we're fortunate that we've been able to do that. And as you say, in our first 12 months, the Nintendo Switch in the US has been the fastest selling system. And our goal is to continue delivering on that momentum.
It's interesting when you put it like that, because it's similar to some startup stories we hear where they try one product and it's maybe 60% of the way there. And it sounds like that's what you're saying about the Wii U. It had the concept of the tablet incorporated with the on-screen experience, but this obviously untethered that tablet and allowed you to take it along. And do you sometimes think of the Wii U as the beta for the Switch?
Yeah, I wouldn't quite say the beta, but certainly without our experiences on the Wii U, we would not have the Nintendo Switch in terms of what we learned and, importantly, what we heard from our consumers. They were telling us, I want to play with this tablet, this gamepad for the Wii U, but as soon as I get more than 30 feet away, it disconnects. So the core concept, something that you could take with you anywhere, anytime, was really compelling. So it was an important step for us to be able to deliver on this proposition.
There's some common themes running through the things that Nintendo has done over the past few years. One of them is the bridge between the on-screen experience in the living room and the rest of the world. And we're going to talk a little bit about Pokemon Go and augmented reality later on. But another is sitting there to your right, the Nintendo Labo. You just came out with your third kit. And I think this may be something that not everybody in the audience knows about. Could you run us through exactly what this is?
Sure. So Nintendo Labo. The concept is a proposition that melds interactive gameplay with physical gameplay. It utilizes DIY kits made of cardboard to create these, what we call Toy-Con controllers, that enable you to manipulate what's going on the TV. In addition, there's an element of this proposition which allows the player to create their own experiences. And so, what I'm holding here is from our latest kit that we call the vehicle kit, and this is the yoke for a plane. Maybe we could get the Boeing team to come and play with this later.
Put that thing in a 787.
But, so it's made of cardboard. It uses one of our controllers that allow you to manipulate the experience going on the big screen TV. As you said, we've got 3 different kits. Each utilizes the controllers in a different way, and the screen from the Nintendo Switch in a different way. For this one, it's a piano that the Nintendo Switch slides into this front area that allows you to see what you're doing. The Toy-Con slides into the back, which allows you to then manipulate the device, see what's going on. And so these kits are sparking the imagination of our target consumer that's between 5 and 8 years old. Yep. It's being recognized as one of the hottest toys of the year. And for us, what's really compelling about it is it's something that young kids can do on their own. There are very detailed instructions on how to make these kits. But it's also a great opportunity for parents to interact with their kids and to have fun creating all of these different devices.
My 7-year-old daughter has been doing this. We've only gotten so far as the gas pedal on the Mario Kart wheel there. And it is a process, and it is a fun process. What lessons can people take away from this? Because it's unexpected, it's a bridge between the physical and the digital. Is this where you see tech going more broadly, connecting these experiences in the real world with the digital world?
One of the things about Nintendo is that while we constantly innovate and we push the envelope, by no means are we making statements on behalf of global industries. Yep. For us, what we look to do is to create compelling experiences, typically that have never been done before, and to bring them to life in a way that's compelling and motivating for our consumer. Yeah. And when we do that, we spark the imagination of other developers and other industries, maybe to take what we've done and push it in a different direction. We've done that with controllers. Analog sticks didn't exist until Nintendo executed one in one of our historical devices. Touch screens weren't a common phenomenon until we included it on the Nintendo DS. Accelerometers, gyroscopic controls, these are all things that we've innovated with in order to deliver a great experience, but then they've been adopted in other ways and by other industries. So, we'd love to see more of this tactile experience between interactive experiences and the touch and feel of something in the real space. But for us, it's just another example of doing something creative and doing something different.
Just recently, you released the official version of Switch Online, your online gaming service. Just in preparation for this session, I did spend some time reading a lot of the gaming forums, and clearly the peer-to-peer approach of your online networking is probably one of the most controversial things you've done in this realm. Can you walk us through the Switch Online experience and respond or address some of the concerns that people have about the performance of P2P versus centralized servers? Mm-hmm.
So Nintendo Switch Online is a service that enables 5 things to happen. So first, certainly it enables connected gameplay on games like Mario Kart or Splatoon. Second, it leverages our legacy content. And we're making Nintendo Entertainment System games available through our Nintendo Switch Online service. We launched with 20 games. We just announced 3 more are coming to the system in just a few weeks' time. Thirdly, it connects to an app on your mobile phone, and that's how the voice chat application works. Fourth, there's a cloud save that consumers can participate in. The cloud save is active even for 6 months after you might have terminated the service. And then the fifth element are what we're calling special opportunities. And the one that we just launched with are 2 Nintendo Entertainment style controllers that fit on your Nintendo Switch and can be used to play the legacy content. So a robust series of services that annually costs $20, so substantially lower than our competition. What's interesting is, again, the Nintendo approach is to do things differently. It's a much different suite of services than our competitors offer. And we deliver these experiences in a different way. And so, it creates a yin and a yang for our consumers in that they see what we're doing and they're excited about the cloud save and the legacy content, but they wish that we might deliver, for example, voice chat a different way. But for us, what we see is a situation where we know the Nintendo Switch is being played out in the open, out in a park, on a metro bus, whatever the case may be. Yeah. And we believe the easiest way for you to connect and to have a peer-to-peer experience with voice chat is through your mobile phone, because it's always there, it's always connected, it's always with you. So, again, what I started this talk with, we focus on innovation, we focus on doing things differently, and that is always going to be our thrust.
It's a great point, because when you started, you framed Nintendo differently than many people think of it, and I think a lot of people in making those kinds of comments about the peer-to-peer functionality and the different features are comparing you directly to PlayStation and Xbox. Do you see Microsoft and Sony as your primary competitors?
So I don't. Think of it this way. We all have 24 hours a day, 1,440 minutes a day. We eat, we sleep, we go to work, or we go to school. All of the rest of that time is entertainment time. That's what I compete for, minute by minute. And that time you spend surfing the web, watching a movie, watching a telecast of a conference. That's all entertainment time that we are competing for minute by minute. So my competitive set is actually much bigger than my direct competitors in Sony and Microsoft. I compete for time. And when I do that, I have to be creative and innovative in order to win that battle for time.
Okay. So some people might say that Nintendo was late to mobile, but that's not true, because if you think about the Game Boy, that's the ultimate mobile experience. You were later than some other game makers to smartphones, and I think this game, Super Mario Run, which was originally released for iOS, was the turning point in that, along with Pokemon Go, which you're obviously involved with through Niantic. Talk to us about Nintendo's approach to smartphones specifically.
So, we see our mobile initiatives as a way to bring our intellectual property and our gameplay experiences to a much larger population than the tens or 100 million consumers that own a dedicated gaming system. And so Super Mario Run, as a great example, with this application, which also launched for Android, so it's across both marketplaces, we literally have hundreds of millions of consumers experiencing Mario. We have consumers in markets that we don't distribute our game consoles experiencing Mario. And for us, that is a major initiative. And it allows us to have new consumers fall in love with this great intellectual property. That's our vision for mobile. It's a way for us to deliver our intellectual property in compelling ways to consumers who may not have experienced those properties before, with a belief that they'll come back and maybe buy a Super Mario t-shirt, they may eat that Super Mario cereal, they may buy a Nintendo Switch because of the affiliation and affection that they now have with the IP.
It's interesting because I think the external perception was that Nintendo was protecting its first-party hardware by not releasing games in that era for third-party smartphones, for iOS and Android devices. Was that the case? And if so, did it change, or was this the plan all along?
No, for us, again, what we needed to think through is how could we utilize the smart device marketplace in a way that drove our overall business agenda, the overall business agenda of entertainment and making people smile. So we needed to create unique experiences because we felt a traditional experience that we created for our home system, if simply transplanted to a mobile device, wouldn't work as well. So we needed to create unique experiences. We needed to work through the monetization because we are a company that's driven to make money. And we needed to work through how to be effective on platforms and marketplaces that we ourselves didn't own, i.e. the iOS platform, the Android platform. And that took time. But now that we've created this experience, we have Super Mario Run, literally downloaded hundreds of millions of times. We have Fire Emblem Heroes, which is intellectual property that by our standards is quite small, but the game is monetizing exceptionally well, and we are broadening that franchise. We launched an Animal Crossing experience, which consumers are loving, and it bodes well as we look to launch an Animal Crossing game on Nintendo Switch coming soon. So for us, it had to be part of a larger strategy versus just one-off executions of mobile games.
Let's talk about augmented and virtual reality. Clearly, you have much more of a stake in augmented reality through your role in Pokemon Go. Virtual reality, not yet. Where do you see those shaking out, to whatever extent you can tell us, in the world of Nintendo?
So, we have experience in this space dating back to the Virtual Boy. With augmented reality, it's something that we built into the Nintendo 3DS, right? A system that is approaching 75 million units sold worldwide. And so this is something that we constantly think about, that we constantly experiment with. Virtual reality, what we've said is it's technology that we're looking at, but in the end it has to be fun, because that is our mission, that is what we do, arguably better than anyone else. And so, nothing to announce here on this stage, but these are going to be technologies that we'll continue to experiment with, and as we look to create new and compelling experiences, we bring them to life. You mentioned Pokemon Go, the utilization of the knowledge that Niantic had in geolocation capabilities, one of the world's most powerful intellectual properties in Pokemon, and it's created an experience that is incredibly compelling.
What did you learn from how that took off? Because that was a marketer's dream. It was viral. Were there any lessons that you took from that maybe you could replicate for success later?
Well, in the end, it was a unique product. The proposition was compelling. You talk to Pokemon users, and what do they say? Boy, I wish I could play Pokemon in real life, right? And so the augmented reality capability of making it seem that one of these creatures was right near you, right there to be captured, was magical. And so, it's a product that the teams involved have done incredibly well. For us, it's just continuation of the lessons we know about innovation, about compelling propositions, and delivering something to our consumer base that they love and will tell other people about it and how that can grow over time.
You alluded to this at the beginning, but one of the most fascinating things on the horizon is the expansion of the brand through the relationship with Universal. What can we expect? And I know there's already an experience in one park, in parks and in theaters with the Nintendo brand.
So what I can tell you is this. Whether it's Universal Studios in the theme park space, whether it's Illumination Entertainment in the movie space, our focus was partnering with best-in-class companies. In doing so, we want to leverage what we do best, which is the creation and management of our intellectual property, and leverage that with what these other companies do best, whether it's in creating a theme park experience that is second to none, or telling stories through video entertainment, which is what Illumination does so well. I can tell you that our creators are heavily involved in these projects, so that what will be the result are true experiences that tie back to the intellectual property. The first park with Universal Studios will open in Osaka, and it's targeted to open before the Olympics in Tokyo in 2020. And the development with Illumination is well underway. And so these are important projects for us as we look to drive our intellectual properties forward.
Is there a risk? I recognize it's important to spread the brand and increase brand awareness. Is there a risk in diluting the focus of the company?
Well, but that's always a risk when you look at these types of additional opportunities. But again, what I could tell you is that the Nintendo executives that are involved in this are limited. Oftentimes it's Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto himself who is not as involved in the day-to-day development of our games. That's being led by Mr. Takahashi at our Kyoto Development Center. And so we've got the right level of resources against these initiatives to make sure that they're executed brilliantly, but that we continue with the game development work that is so critical to our performance.
Reggie, this has been fantastic. Is there any message you'd want to leave the crowd with here?
So the message that I would leave for this group, we're a local company out in Redmond. We are a company that, as I've said repeatedly, is focused on innovation, focused on reinvention, focused on doing things that are new and different. And from that standpoint, we're always looking to work with innovative partners that share our mindset. And as a shameless plug, we're always looking for great people.
Oh, everybody's hiring, Reggie. Reggie Fils-Aime, thank you very much for being at the GeekWire Summit.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. The Reginator, thank you for being here at the GeekWire Summit. Hey, everybody, something momentous and historic is going to happen in the next minute, and we need your help. Do you know what's happening? Test message from President Trump. A special text message is coming. Kurt Schlosser here on the GeekWire team has been tracking this very closely for us. Here's what we're going to do so we don't disrupt the next session. When you get your text message, if you get it, if the government is working, I just got one, but it was not from President Trump.
Get your phone out.
Get your phone out. We're going to have you stand up if you get it and put your flashlight on, and we're going to have a great GeekWire Summit moment here. It is happening at 11:18, and it is 11:18.
Yeah, this is a test of the wireless emergency alert system. It's not a tweet. They're coming in.
They're coming in. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. If you get it, stand up. This is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System.
Everybody
Don't
okay?
worry. No
Everybody
action.
Okay?
No action is required.
Do not reply all. The country is listening.
I think we should reply all, don't we? Don't we want to send a message? I think together, collectively, we can send a special message to Trump.
We could.
Hey, it worked.
The cool thing, nobody was allowed to opt out of that. That went to millions of users across
Actually,
the
we have a
country.
few people seated. Did you not get it?
No.
The people in the middle you guys didn't get it?
The president is on the line. Pick up your phone.
Are you Canadian?
All right, everybody feel safe?
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well,
you.
this is a serious thing, and it is a proper use of technology, Kurt. We had some scares with this, with the Hawaii situation, which I know you covered as well.
Exactly. That was a regional alert, and you do have the option to opt out of that type of an alert. Amber alerts are the same. In Hawaii, it was very scary. It was during the height of tensions with North Korea, and a ballistic missile warning went out to the residents of that island state, and it scared the heck out of a lot of people.
And we actually, on the GeekWire news team, we actually got an alert, a news alert from the senator in Hawaii who was saying, hey, there are a lot of things to be worried about in our country right now. Let's not get bent out of shape about this. Let's make sure these types of tests actually work and happen. So I know people like actress Alyssa Milano is pretty upset about this. We think this is probably a smart use of technology, and I'm actually happy to see that it worked here today.
Yeah, it worked. Yeah.
Wait, whose phone's going off? Is that so? There's an audio alert as well.
It's a very unique buzz.
Interesting.
And,
I didn't get that.
Vibration.
Okay. Well, we're all safe. And thank you for being here at the GeekWire Summit. With that, I'm going to bring up Jonathan Sposato, the chairman of GeekWire, who's going to take us into our next session, the Geeks Give Back session.
Okay, hold up. Check this out. My text alert from President Trump, it says, it's time for Geeks Give Back.
Yes,
that's
okay.
what mine says.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you. So, really the founding of GeekWire and how we started this was really about the fact that we believed that Seattle was a world-class city, that we had a world-class tech ecosystem. Now, sadly, we also have some world-class problems in terms of what's going on in the community. And all too often, we're very lucky, all of us sitting here, and we have the opportunity to say yes or to say no to a lot of things. And a lot of times, it's easy to say no. And I'll admit to doing this. It's easy to say no to a head tax. I myself said no to a head tax for a variety of reasons. It can sometimes be easy for us to say no to a homeless encampment near our neighborhood because we're not sure how we want to deal with that with our children. And that's somewhat understandable. But the challenge that I would ask all of you is, what are you all saying yes to? And one of the things that I encourage you to say yes to is our Geeks Give Back program. And there are people who've been working tirelessly to help the homeless community and those less fortunate in our community. And I'd like to welcome to the stage one of them, my good friend Tony Mestris, who's actually had a lifelong, very successful career as a technology executive at Microsoft, my own alma mater, but in the last 4 years has chosen to give of himself in service to the Seattle Foundation. And so welcome to the stage, Tony Mestris, Executive Director of the Seattle Foundation. Thank you for being here.
Jonathan, thank you very much. And I can just say one or two words about Jonathan. He walks the walk. So what we'll talk about just briefly is how to engage all of you. And I can tell you that there are a lot of people in this room who have very cool jobs. I believe I actually have the coolest job in Seattle. I get to lead an organization whose mission is to ignite powerful, rewarding philanthropy to make Greater Seattle a stronger, more vibrant community for all. And that is something that is a Herculean task right now. We're very proud of the partnership with GeekWire and Bank of America for Geeks Give Back. Go to geeksgiveback.org, get involved. I know there's probably a lot of people in this room who do important work to try to help your community already, but I'll just say if you haven't begun that journey, for me it started about 20 years ago when I was just starting at Microsoft, and it really helped me to define myself in this world and to grow immensely as a human being, to learn humility and compassion and empathy that I didn't know I had inside me. And also as a parent, for those parents in the room, it's an incredibly important thing to raise your kids with an awareness that we live in a world where there are too many people who are left behind. And the other thing that I think is really important for this crowd is that innovation is really badly needed in terms of the work that we're all doing in the community. So applying your brains, not just your wallets, to making this a better place is a huge, huge need. We're going to focus in the next section around a really critical problem we all deal with and are aware of every day. That's homelessness. And the organization, Plymouth Housing, that is going to talk to you has actually done some amazing work really going upstream. And some of the things that we work on in terms of impact-driven philanthropy is about looking at root causes. And for homelessness, that includes affordable housing, behavioral mental health, jobs, the criminal justice system, the foster care system. So with that, I want to actually give the stage to the person who matters most, and those are the people on the front line. Please join me in welcoming Brandon Getz from Plymouth Housing Group.
Hi everyone, my name is Brandon Getz and I work for Plymouth Housing Group as a building manager. I've been there a little over 10 years now, and we provide permanent supportive housing to the chronically homeless. So in short, we're actively working to get the people sleeping outside back inside, because we believe everyone should have a safe place to lay their head at night. And we're talking about a lot of these people, they deal with chronic mental illness as well as a lot of physical illnesses and disabilities, and so they've got a lot of barriers that have kept them from becoming housed. So I'd like to first start off by saying thank you to Geeks That Give, as well as Bank of America for your support to Plymouth and for facilitating us being here and represented today. So thank you. And anyone that hasn't stopped by our booth, please do so. It's right outside of those doors. So thank you. So I'm going to take a leap and say most of you guys are here today because of your involvement in the tech industry and the overall economic opportunity that Seattle offers. Is that a reasonable assumption? Okay. I'm here for much different reasons. I came to Seattle after the realization that my drug addiction was in all likelihood going to kill me. So I decided to get as far away from my family as I could so that they didn't have to watch. I came out to Seattle to stay with a friend from back east who said I could stay with him until I got a job and got on my feet. But unfortunately, he had a change of heart, and so I found myself walking down the street on the Ave in the U District with nowhere to go. I did not know where I was going to lay my head that night, and that was a question that I would have to ask myself many more nights to come. And like that, I was homeless. But I met a guy named Irish Patty who lived in a car, and so he let me live in that car with him. And I found a job, and so I was okay. Soon after that, though, the car got towed, and I found myself in handcuffs due to my drug addiction, which resulted in me losing that job. And then a cycle began of where am I going to stay tonight? And it was shelters, sometimes if I was lucky, somebody's couch, jails, and then as my health started to deteriorate, hospitals. Eventually, the only place I could find work was day labor, and that was sporadic at best. There was many days they just didn't have work. And so I one day resigned to standing on the side of the road holding a sign. And I think that's when I'd really given up. And I knew things weren't going to get better, and they actually got much worse. I was something that people didn't want to look at, and so people looked away. And honestly, I was someone that I didn't want to look at. But life had other plans for me, and somebody chose not to look away. Gave me a place to stay, a place to heal and rest, but most importantly, they gave me hope. And with that hope, I was able to course correct. And that's why I'm here today. That's why I'm doing this work at Plymouth. And I love my job. I get to hand somebody keys to their apartment that's been sleeping outside for who knows how long and say, welcome home. I get to see that person crack a smile for the first time in a long time after years of being hardened. I get to see that spark in someone's eyes light back up. I get to see somebody find hope again. And while Plymouth is, first off, we are housing, our hidden commodity is hope. And we've got an abundance of that. And so I look around this room today at all of the heads and innovators of this industry, and I just think what you all could accomplish with a collective vision of what Seattle can be. Both a technological hub, a place for growth, but also a place that's socially conscious. You guys can make Seattle a model city for the world. A place where people don't have to sleep outside. A place where you're not walking past someone sleeping in a doorway. So I'm going to ask something to you guys today. Well, there's a lot that I can think of, but we'll start with this. So the next time you're about to walk past a homeless person, don't look away. See them. Give them a nod. Say hello. And in that moment, you've just given that person a little bit of hope, which they desperately need. And in that moment, you've joined us in our collective vision of the city that Seattle can become. Thank you.
Hey, Brandon. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. That's right. Let's make some hope. Let's make some more hope. Thank you. And now I bring up Mr. Todd Bishop.
Is sponsored by Wave Business. I'd like to welcome Dave Eller, Senior Director at Wave, to join us here up on the stage to say a couple words. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Well, I've only got a minute, so I'll be brief, but it's great to be here today, and nobody ever would have imagined this small little cable outfit based in La Conner, Washington, would morph itself into the 6th largest cable operator in the U.S., but we have. That's what happened at Wave this year. So just wanted to share that information with everybody, that earlier in the year we joined forces with RCN Cable in the Northeast and Grande Communications in Texas. And so really the value behind that was to become a national player. And so where the rubber meets the road for us in Seattle is, we build fiber optic networks. And so we're able to extend our reach into new markets like Boston, Manhattan, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Austin, Texas. So really excited about that. There's a lot happening in our company, and so we just wanted to share that. And we're proud to be sponsors of this great event. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for your support. All right. Let's watch a brief video to set up our next talk.
Second stage tanks now pressurized. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Our next speaker, Dennis Muilenburg, is Chairman of the Board, President, and Chief Executive Officer of the Boeing Company, overseeing the strategic direction of the $93 billion aerospace company. With 140,000 employees across the United States and in more than 65 countries, Boeing is the world's largest aerospace company and top U.S. exporter. It is the leading manufacturer of commercial airplanes, military aircraft, and space and security systems, all of which are areas that will be explored in our next session, moderated by Alan Boyle, GeekWire's aerospace and science editor. Please welcome to the GeekWire Summit, Boeing CEO, Chairman, and President, Dennis Muilenburg. Welcome. Thank you.
Alan, Dennis, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
There's so much that we could talk about, Dennis, just from that video, all the things that Boeing is into, but I got to start with our shared Hawkeye roots, that you grew up on a farm in northwest Iowa. I grew up on a farm in eastern Iowa. You've been at Boeing for, what, 33 years?
33 years,
But
yeah.
you talk about that Iowa influences being very formative for your life and your career. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how that Iowa influence works.
Yeah, well, thank you. And to your Iowa reference, the Hawkeye reference, I actually went to Iowa State, so I kind of think
The Cyclones.
The Cyclones.
Yeah, okay,
Hawkeyes.
the Cyclone State.
But great place to grow up, and like you, grew up in a farm in Iowa. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from my youth was what I learned from my parents on the farm. And my dad was a lifelong farmer. Just the values around integrity, hard work, respect for other people, how you treat others. And even though he was never a business executive, he was very wise when it came to leadership. And those leadership lessons work no matter what you are, what kind of business you do. And they certainly work at Boeing, and you can see those reflected in the values of our company around integrity and the importance of the work we do.
Are there Iowa influences that you have seen take root at Boeing even during your watch? You've been in a leadership role for some years now.
Well, as a team, we recognize the importance of what we do, so I think you see those roots reflected in the values of the company. And in a business like the one we have, we know people's lives literally depend on what we do. And it's the safety of the passengers on our commercial airplanes, the servicemen and women around the world that we support. And when lives depend on what you do, our work needs to have a sense of excellence in how we do it and a sense of integrity. And I think those roots and values you see permeate throughout our company.
The aerospace business has changed quite a bit since you joined Boeing as an engineering intern in 1985. If you were to sit down with a prospective engineering intern from Iowa State today, what advice would you give other than that he or she should come to work at Boeing?
Yeah. Well, I would suggest that you ought to take the opportunity to stretch and grow and imagine the possibilities. When I came to Boeing in 1985, I drove my 1982 Monte Carlo from Iowa to Seattle, and that was the first time I saw the Rocky Mountains. And when I got to Seattle in the area, first time I saw the ocean. But what really hooked me on Boeing was the incredible people, the talent, and the amount of innovation, leading edge innovation at the company. And as big as it was back then, it's so much more now. And I look at the amount of innovation happening in aerospace today. We are in a golden age of innovation and new products and services, revolutions in how we design and build and manufacture, artificial intelligence and autonomy in our systems and in our factories. It is a fantastic time of innovation. So interns coming to Boeing today, just grab hold of the innovation, stretch, grow. We're doing amazing things that a few years ago we thought were impossible.
Since we're in Seattle, we got to talk about commercial airplanes, and I understand that you're going to be going up to the Boeing factory later on today. What are you going to tell the workers there?
Well, one, I'm going to tell them thank you. So I'm going to head up to Everett a little later today and take a look at some of the fine products up there, including our 787 Dreamliner, the new 777X, and a few other things. But we just have amazing people, and we're going to deliver more commercial airplanes this year than we ever have in the past, more than 800 this year alone. And that'll be a new record next year. And as we get to the end of the decade, we'll be delivering more than 900 airplanes a year. So this is a tremendous growing business. And the reason it's working, the reason it's productive, the reason we're able to compete and win and invest in innovation is these incredible people. So I'm going to tell them thank you, and take some questions and see if there's any help needed out there, but it's mostly just to acknowledge the great work of our people.
As you mentioned, the prospect looks very bright for Boeing's growth, and I know Randy Tinseth comes up with a 20-year outlook that looks sunnier and sunnier every year, but there have been some growing pains as well. For example, the log jam of 737s at the Renton plant. What were the lessons learned from that sort of growth and dealing with suppliers, and how would you apply that to the projects ahead like the 777X?
Well, it's the key is to think about this as a growth business. So these are challenges as we're ramping up supply chains, ramping up production lines. Those are very real challenges, but they're great challenges to have in the context of a growing business. And a world that needs about 43,000 new commercial airplanes over the next 20 years is going to need a lot of 737s. And so we're in the midst of ramping up our production line on 737. Last year, we were building 47 a month. This year, we moved to 52 a month. And next year, we're going to 57 a month. And so while we're ramping up rate, we're also introducing a new model, the latest version of the 737, the MAX. And so that combination of a new model mix and production rate ramp up has been challenging for our supply chain. We have literally thousands of businesses in our supply chain that all have to be synchronized to build these airplanes. And so we've had a few issues there and have had to work through a recovery plan, which is now being implemented. You saw that in our increased production numbers in August, and we're continuing to execute our recovery plan here. We'll put out September delivery data next week, and you'll see that we're continuing to make progress there. But each time we do a production rate ramp up, there are lessons learned in synchronizing a supply chain that we apply to the next program, and that includes things like 777X.
One of the recent trends is to try to bring some of that supply chain internal to Boeing. Can you talk about that? Are you starting to get pushback from suppliers?
Yeah, it's all a balancing act, but we've made a deliberate decision that there are some what we call vertical capabilities, deep technical capabilities that we want to rebuild inside of Boeing. And we don't need to be vertical everywhere. We still need a world-class supply chain in most of those areas. But we've identified a few areas like complex composite wing structures. That's a place where we want a deep vertical, hence our new composite wing factory up in Everett. Some areas in avionics and data analytics where we want to have deep vertical capability. So we're building those out. Those are internal investments, and we're balancing that with our external supply chain and keeping those in balance for the future.
There's been a lot of talk about the new midsize airplane, the NMA, the 797. By the way, do you think 797 is an okay name?
Well, we haven't decided on a name, let alone launching the airplane yet. But yeah, we're working our way through that evaluation right now, taking a look at that middle of the market. We do see a marketplace there for 4,000 to 5,000 aircraft. And we've had discussions with dozens of potential customers, so getting some very good insights. We'll likely make a decision, a go, no-go decision next year on whether we launch that new airplane. So we're in the middle of defining that right now. We don't see that as an airplane that's really going to stretch the performance technology of airplanes. It's really going to be one that will stretch our manufacturing technology, our production systems. And so those are the details that we're working through right now.
When you make the go, no-go decision, do you also say where the plane is going to be built? Because that's been a mystery almost as big as Amazon's HQ too.
Yeah. Well, it's all an integrated game plan, so it includes the definition of the airplane, the support systems, supply chain definition, location of work. A big criteria around this will be access to the right talent base and the workforce for the future. And we know that any big new airplane program is going to have jobs all over the country. So these are not just single point decisions. These are decisions we make that span all of our geographies and our supply chain. And a lot of details to be worked through yet. But that'll be part of the decision that we would announce tied to a launch.
And just for the record, Seattle is still in the mix. You haven't eliminated the Seattle area.
Yeah, and you can see the investment we're making here in Seattle, right? About half of our Boeing workforce is here in Seattle. I started here in Seattle as an intern 33 years ago. Spent about 15 years here. So we have an awesome team here, incredible talent. And we're continuing to invest here in Seattle. And you can take a look at the expansion of the 737 line. Go up to Everett, see the expansion of the lines there, the new composite wing center, the new delivery centers that we built here in the Puget Sound. So we've been strong here for our entire history, and we'll continue to be strong here for the future.
One of the interesting things about the discussion of the NMA project, and also in terms of the defense programs, is the idea that you are generating revenue over the life cycle of the aircraft, and it almost sounds like you're going to a model where you provide a good deal on the razors and then sell the razor blades. Is that the way things are going?
Well, we're looking more and more at the total life cycle value of airplanes, and the actual design and production of an airplane over its lifetime is only about 20 to 30% of the actual cost to the customer. So the majority of the value for the customer is in the post-production support. And that's an area where we are deliberately trying to grow Boeing. And you've probably seen that we launched a new services business a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half now, Boeing Global Services. And we set a high bar target to grow that to be a $50 billion a year business, which is tough but achievable. And we're making investments to grow to that scale. That includes the vertical strategy that I mentioned earlier, as well as deliberate decisions about how we're going to design and support for the future. But we do see that as an opportunity to really add value for our customers. And that is one of the lenses that we're looking through in terms of how we think about the middle of the market potential airplane.
What's your expectation for hitting that $50 billion a year figure?
Yeah. Well, I expect to hit it. We set a target to get there over 5 to 10 years. And we're making good progress. In our first year, that business grew at about 10% a year. Year to date, that business has grown closer to 12 to 13%. So we are accelerating in the marketplace. The services market is growing at about 3 to 3.5% a year. So you can see we are outpacing the market, and we intend to continue that trend.
So 5 to 10 years is still your expectation there.
You bet.
I wanted to touch on Boeing's defense business, and
Yeah.
there's been a lot of good news there. I think there's been a hat trick that you pulled off with the tanker drone MQ-25 and the Huey helicopter replacement program and the TX training jet.
Absolutely.
What else is there to win?
Well, these are 3 exciting wins for the Boeing company, and we had talked for a couple of years about these new franchises, and these are extended competitions for our defense customer, and we're very fortunate to be selected in all 3 during just the last month here as the timelines all lined up. But I think this really represents a combination of one, being very close to our customers and making sure we're adding value for them, and then focusing our innovation investments and doing that in a way that leverages the whole Boeing company. So our learnings from commercial airplanes and advanced manufacturing, our know-how, the innovations we've made in software and avionics in the defense side, bringing that combination to our customers. And so as a result, we're going to be working with the Navy on this new MQ-25 drone coming off of aircraft carriers. Fantastic innovation. The new MH-139 helicopter for our Air Force customer, and then the new TX trainer.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic set of innovations that'll bring not only a new airplane to our Air Force pilots, but ground-based trainers and simulators as well, all leveraging new VR and augmented reality technology, really as a next-generation training capability.
Now, there are some CEOs who make a habit of saying, well, we're going to eat our own dog food, or if we're going to make a spacecraft like Richard Branson, he says, I'm going to take the first ride on it. Are you that type of guy?
Yeah, actually, I flew on our TX last fall.
Ah, okay.
So we didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, but we built 2 prototypes, and I had the privilege of flying in the back seat of one of those with one of our Boeing test
Tell me
pilots
about the ride.
last fall. What's that?
Tell me about the ride.
Oh, it was fantastic. So we were up for maybe an hour and a half. I got some stick time while we were up. We did some max rate rolls. Got a feel for the handling qualities of the airplane. The visuals that new pilots would have is in terms of the training system interface, the cockpit interface. And I just love airplanes and I love flying. So anytime I get a chance to go up in a new airplane with one of our pilots, I take full advantage.
Now, the KC-46 tanker program is coming up to a big milestone that I think the current plan is to start deliveries this month.
Yep.
Is that still on track?
The 4th quarter deliveries is our plan. So we're actively working that with our Air Force customer right now. So great news is just last month we received what's called the supplemental type certificate, which is a big step in certifying a new airplane. Certifying and showing that it meets all of the requirements for our customer. And that was the culmination of more than 3,000 tanking missions, more than 3,000 flights that we've taken with our Air Force customers. So we are now in the process of finishing up certification and the paperwork and the test reports and confirming that all of the customer requirements are met, and then we'll move into production. I think another good sign of confidence is the Air Force just gave us an additional contract for the next 18 tankers, which brings us to 52 tankers on contract now. So that's another great step forward. We're looking forward to actually delivering the first one. We have dozens of airplanes in flow in the factory right now, and this is going to serve the needs of our servicemen and women for decades and decades to come. So we're really honored, really proud to support our Air Force customer with this new product.
So the time frame is more general. It's not necessarily October, but it's in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, 4th quarter is our target. And again, as you get into the final phases of exactly when we start delivering and making sure that the training stand-up at the Air Force Base is ready to go and ready to receive. We're within that window, and now really just in the final stages of planning. This is an incredible tanker, and it'll be replacing KC-135s that are based on the, believe it or not, the Boeing 707 airframe that have been in service for 40, 50 years. So it's time for a new tanker, and this is going to be a great machine.
And it's been a challenge for you, I think, because of the fixed price nature of the contract. There have been some cost overruns amounted to something like $3 billion for Boeing. Were there any lessons learned from that? It looks as if fixed price contracts are here to stay.
Yeah, it's been a challenging development program without question. And some of the complexities here was this is really the first airplane where we're building the military-derived airplane on the commercial airplane line. And so if you go up to the Everett facility, you'll see 767 freighters, commercial freighters going down the production line, intermingled with tankers. And so that integrated production approach was the first time we'd done it, rather than taking a commercial airplane off the line and then flying it somewhere and tearing it down and modifying it. So there's some additional complexities associated with that. It was more difficult than we originally anticipated. But now that we understand how to do it, we're seeing the efficiencies in the production line. So we expect to recoup that investment over time. Again, this is going to be a production run of hundreds of airplanes with support and services for decades to come. So in our business, you got to think about upfront investment that produces decades of benefit for both the company and the customer. And that's how we think about tanker.
Do you need to recalibrate how you make your bids because of the fixed price arrangement?
Yeah, it's something that places more emphasis on the risk profile early in these programs and how you manage that risk. But it also, again, is a good reminder of why we want to invest in the services business, because when you're taking risk up front to invest in development, you want to be able to share the value with the customer for the life cycle, because airplanes are products that are literally in the hands of customers for decades. And it's important to have that long-term investment perspective.
Well, since this is a tech conference, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the technologies that Boeing is pioneering. You've talked so much about autonomous flight, electric propulsion, AR, VR, robots and humans working together. What are the big priorities for you in terms of technological innovation?
Well, as I said, we have more innovation happening in our industry today than ever. It's really a tremendous golden age of aerospace. You see that in the new products and airplanes and services that we're producing, some of which we talked about, the new 777X, the new TX trainer, the new tanker as examples. We also see it in our factories, where we're looking at technology that can drive efficiency and safety, robotics and automation in our factories, implemented in a way that's good for our people and improves safety. And so this idea of collaborative human-robot interfaces on our production lines, we're implementing that on the 777X, part of what I'm going to go see this afternoon. Artificial intelligence and autonomy more broadly in airplanes for the future will be very important. We're looking at new sources of propulsion power, hybrid electric power. In particular, when we start thinking about urban mobility solutions for the future. Think about dense urban environments. I was on I-5 earlier today. You've all been on I-5 waiting in traffic.
Sadly.
Imagine a future city that has three-dimensional highways with flying taxis or flying cars. That future is not that far away. In fact, we're building prototype vehicles today, but we're also investing in the ecosystem that will allow that to operate safely and reliably as it must. And that's where artificial intelligence and autonomous technology really come into play. So it's a very, very exciting future.
I think you've mentioned that Aurora Flight Sciences, a Boeing subsidiary, is working on the prototype for an air taxi. What do you expect the time frame will be for starting testing, and then also for getting that ecosystem going, which is going to require some regulatory changes?
Yeah, well, we're building prototypes now, so we expect to be flying here within the year. There are a number of other companies that are working on prototypes as well. And the work on the ecosystem is underway as well. We just announced a joint venture that we're doing with a small company called Spark Cognition, a company that has expertise in artificial intelligence.
That's
and
under
together,
the Boeing Next
Yeah, that's
program?
another big investment we've made through Boeing Next. And we're together working on this future unmanned traffic management system and all of the regulatory authorities. So the FAA is involved and all of the other appropriate government agencies. So that work is underway. This is a transformation that's going to happen faster than many of us might have thought a couple years ago. And we're at the very leading edge of that right now. So,
would you say 5 years we'll see?
I think you'll see operational capabilities faster than 5 years. Said we're going to be flying prototypes within the next year, and there are some places where you'll have dedicated corridors again to ensure the safety and reliability. And I think you'll see that sort of initial scale operational implementation within 5 years. Now, scaling it up to be full three-dimensional city traffic will take longer, but you should expect to see a stepwise implementation so that over time we can build confidence and ensure the system runs safely and reliably. And you'll probably start with cargo movement and then ultimately step up to movement of people.
Where are the test flights going to be flown?
I'm not revealing that particular information yet, but we have some dedicated locations. Really, the key is when you start flying these autonomous systems, you have to have dedicated airspace with all the right FAA approvals.
Airbus was flying their Vahana prototype in Pendleton, around Pendleton.
Yeah, and similar case, right? And as I said, there are many, many companies that are investing in this area. One of the reasons it's going to move fast is you see the amount of capital that's flowing into autonomous vehicles, both on the ground and now in the air, and that will further accelerate it. Our view from a Boeing standpoint is we want to bring that innovation edge, but we also want to make sure this is safe and that it's reliable. That's what passengers will count on. And so having the ecosystem to go along with the vehicles is really important that we do that concurrently.
Aurora has been working with Uber, so is that going to be where these show up on the commercial market, or is Aurora
that
willing
is
to work with all comers?
That is one very viable pipeline. And again, Uber is doing some leading edge work on that ecosystem development as well. And our Aurora Flight Sciences team, as I said, is building prototypes. So that's going to be a big part of the future. And then you're going to see commercial aerospace expand even farther from there to hypersonic aircraft and to spacecraft.
Spacecraft, you said the magic word for me. That's what I've been
you and
writing
I
about
both
for a
enjoy
long time.
spacecraft,
And one of the big steps is going to be the CST-100 Starliner, which is going to be going to the space station hopefully within the next year. So what's the current status of the Starliner?
Yeah, we're deep into testing of that right now. So we've got several spacecraft that have been built and are undergoing qualification testing. And we expect first launch of the Starliner next year. So just around the corner. You might have seen recently NASA announced the first astronaut crew that will fly on the Starliner. We'll also have Chris Ferguson, who's a retired NASA astronaut, was shuttle commander for STS-135, now a Boeing employee, will be on that flight as well. We've got 5 seats on the Starliner, 4 for the NASA astronauts, 1 extra. So,
I think we're going to arm wrestle, right, to see who gets that seat, if Chris can't.
It's going to be exciting to see how that whole ecosystem evolves, because we see trends now for higher speed commercial transport in the air, hypersonic vehicles that can connect any part of the world in a couple of hours. But we also see a low Earth orbit space ecosystem developing. And within the decade, you're going to see space travel, low Earth orbit space travel, be much more commonplace. Not only going to the International Space Station, as we will today, but also other destinations in space, space tourism, space factories. That whole ecosystem is evolving, and we'll be deeply involved in the transportation system that will enable access. And the Starliner, you can think of that as our first vehicle into what in the longer term will be a portfolio of commercial space vehicles to go along with our commercial airplanes.
And I know that Boeing is working on $1 million study for NASA that's due in December on low Earth orbit commercialization. Can you give a preview? I think you've already mentioned this idea of a portfolio of space vehicles, which is very interesting.
Yeah, we're looking at that entire ecosystem, and again, what's the right regulatory framework around it? You can think of in the future where you have commercial airplanes flying as you have today, and in dense urban environments, you might have these small mobility vehicles. You might have hypersonic vehicles traveling at higher speed through the same airspace. And then to get space vehicles into orbit, you need launch corridors for the space vehicles. So that all needs an integrated traffic system. That's part of what we're working on with NASA and the FAA. And then you can think of once you're in space, just as an air traffic system developed over time as airplanes matured, as spacecraft and space transportation systems mature, we'll need a traffic system in space as well. So that's all part of what we're working on. There's also a very important investment and talent dimension to this. So how do we attract kids to STEM careers? How do we build the talent pipeline we're going to need to create this future space ecosystem? That's a very exciting opportunity.
It sounds like there's an evolution to an integrated aerospace traffic system. Rather than having air traffic control, you'll have aerospace traffic
That's
control.
exactly the future we're headed to. Yep.
SpaceX is also in the hunt for this, and they've got their Dragon being prepared for taking astronauts to the space station. Have you had much dealing with Elon Musk?
Yeah, we actually do a fair amount of work with SpaceX. So we launch some of our Boeing satellites on Falcon rockets for customers who want that launch package. So we collaborate in some areas, and we compete in other areas. And in this commercial crew arena is a place where we're competing. And I welcome the competition. I like the fact that SpaceX and Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos and his team are investing in space, because it's gaining interest, it's adding capital, it's adding momentum. You know, we have more going on in the space program in this country today than we have for decades, since the days of Apollo. And I love seeing just the amount of effort that's going into this, because it's attracting talent, it's building a capital base, and it's part of how we'll create a viable, economically viable space ecosystem for the future.
Do you see opportunities for working with Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos?
Absolutely. In fact, you might have seen just recently we announced under our United Launch Alliance umbrella, we're working on a new low-cost rocket for space access called the Vulcan rocket. And we just recently agreed with Jeff and the Blue Origin team that they'll be the rocket engine provider for that new rocket. So that's just one example of where we're collaborating.
I wanted to finish up with Mars. Now, you've said several times over the past couple of years that it could be as little as a decade before the first person gets to Mars, and that person will arrive on by virtue of a Boeing-built rocket. So you're talking about the Space Launch System, right?
Yes.
And the Space Launch System has had its challenges. I think that there's talk that it might not be until 2030 that you can start talking about Mars missions. SpaceX is talking about going in the 2020s. So I guess that means either that SLS is going to accelerate or SpaceX is going to lag behind.
Well, today there is just one rocket actually being built that has the capacity to go back to the moon and to Mars, and that's the Space Launch System. And we're actually building the first rocket now, and we'll be doing initial test launch next year. Right, so this is the reality of building a new rocket, and it's being assembled right now down at Michoud with our NASA customer, and it's about a 38-story tall rocket. Think of it as about 50% bigger than the Saturn V that took astronauts to the moon back in the 60s. And I'm not sure most of the country realizes how big this is, but it's bigger than the Apollo program. And with our NASA customer, we're headed back to the moon, but not just going to the moon and returning. We're going to go to the moon and set up a permanent presence. We're going to set up a lunar gateway that then will become a rendezvous point for assembling additional hardware that will go to Mars as a low-gravity launch environment to go to Mars. And then together, that'll be the next step. So go to the moon, set up a permanent base, and then step to Mars. And I still firmly believe that the first person who steps foot on Mars is going to get there on this NASA Boeing rocket that we're working on today. And when I talk to kids about STEM careers and opportunities for the future, I can still tell you deep space exploration probably gets them more excited than anything. And when you see the reality that we're working on that rocket now, this isn't just a opinion or a view of the future. That we're building real hardware now. This is exciting.
Last question. Today, most people around here probably think about Boeing as an airplane company, and as we've seen today, it's much more than airplanes. How do you think people are going to see Boeing 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, they'll still see us as an airplane company. Airplanes are in our blood. I just think the definition of airplane will broaden over time. You know, we've been in the airplane business now for a century, and we're just started our second century. And over this next century, airplanes will evolve to include these urban mobility solutions, hypersonic airplanes, space planes. So we'll still be an airplane company, but the definition of airplanes will be much bigger.
Thank you. Thank you for spending the time with us.
Great. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Thank you.
Great job, Alan. Thank you. Thanks, Alan. Thank you so much for being at the GeekWire Summit. Again, we are ready for lunch presented by Hired. So make sure to go grab a box lunch. Also, check out our exhibitors. A lot of awesome prizes happening over there. A float plane tour of Seattle, maybe on one of the original Boeing float planes. I don't think so, but a float plane tour of Seattle presented by WSGR. So check their booth out. Regato's giving away a jam stick and Bluetooth guitar. That sounds super cool. Facebook, their exhibitor booth. Oculus Go, they're giving away. Flexential, they're having a video game competition. Synapse is giving away a sous vide. And Strideline is giving away custom socks. So make sure you check that out. Also, in addition to Hired, a big thanks to our partners at Seco. They are developing Southport. This is a super cool 17-acre mixed-use development down in Renton. It is beautiful. You should check it out. Make sure you hear more about Southport. So thanks to Hired and Seco Development for helping bring this lunch to us today. Enjoy the rest of the summit, and we'll be back here at 1 o'clock for our next session. Thank you.